to be not only remembered, but also understood. And we hope this study will find a different, larger audience than the multi-volume trilogy. David M. Glantz, Colonel, Field Artillery, retired, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Jonathan M. House, Colonel, Military Intelligence, retired, Leavenworth, Kansas. Prologue. The German army was poised to launch Operation Blau, Blue, its second summer offensive to conquer the Soviet Union. After great efforts, the Germans had replaced most but not all the equipment and personal losses of 1941, at least in Army Group South, which would conduct the main attack southeastward to the Caucasus Mountains. Then, less than 2 weeks before the scheduled start of the main offensive, and with preliminary attacks already underway, a staff officer compromised a significant portion of the Blau plan. The cause was one of the recurring weaknesses of German operational procedures, the lack of operations security. Auftragstaktik, loosely translated as mission-type orders, allowed subordinate commanders to exercise considerable initiative depending on the situation. To do this, however, commanders and staff officers believed they needed to know the plans of higher and adjacent units, so that a local decision would support the commander's intent. Unfortunately, widespread sharing of such information caused a geometric increase in the probability that the enemy would also learn of German plans. This problem had compromised a number of earlier German operations. On January 10, 1940, for example, a German aircraft inadvertently made a forced landing near Mechelen in neutral Belgium. On this plane was the logistics planner for the Luftwaffe's 7th Parachute Division, carrying significant extracts from the German plan, Case Yellow, to invade the Low Countries. This event forced the Germans to completely rework their campaign plan. Next, during the invasion of Crete, the British found a regimental operations order on the body of a dead officer. Such compromises had prompted Adolf Hitler to demand stringent restrictions on information. For example, no operations order was to be taken forward of Corps headquarters prior to an attack. Unfortunately, many German officers continued to follow their usual habits, violating the spirit, if not the letter, of Hitler's instructions. One such well-intentioned meddler was General of Panzer Troops Georg Stumme, commander of the 40th Motorized Corps. At the urging of his subordinates, Stumme dictated a 1-page summary of the first phase of the forthcoming offensive, Blau 1, and distributed that summary, along with a map overlay, to his division commanders. In turn, each division commander shared this information with his own operations officer, known as IA in the German system, grossly circumventing standing security orders. Major Joachim Reichel, the IA of 23rd Panzer Division, compounded the problem by taking the overlay and summary on an aerial reconnaissance of his division's assigned axis of advance. On the afternoon of June 19, 1942, Reichel's Fiesler Storch, a small liaison aircraft identical to the one that had landed in Belgium in 1940, disappeared behind Soviet lines after suffering a fuel leak from ground fire. A German combat patrol found the downed aircraft, and nearby the graves of Reichel and his pilot, but there was no sign of the missing order. An investigation led to General Stumme's relief from command, effective July 9th, which in turn necessitated a reshuffling of panzer commanders in the midst of the Blau campaign. Meanwhile, at Hitler's insistence, a court-martial convicted Stumme, his chief of staff, and the division commander of gross negligence, for which the penalty was death. A number of senior officers appealed on behalf of these 3 men, so Hitler permitted Stumme to be reassigned to North Africa, where he died in October while serving as acting commander of the Panzer Army during Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's temporary absence. Reichel's escapade occurred too late to change the plans for Operation Blau, so the Germans went ahead with them despite the potential compromise. Fortunately for the attackers, Joseph Stalin suspected that the captured plan was a deliberate deception. It seemed incredible to him that the Germans would jeopardize their plans in such a foolish manner. The Soviet commanders were, in any event, fixated on defending Moscow rather than the road to the Caucasus.